She was at 8 months pregnant when her husband waved goodbye from the stairs of a private jet. He wasn't waving hello, he was leaving. Forever. And he wasn't alone. Standing behind him was a woman Caroline recognized. His marketing director. The woman who had sent her a baby shower gift just 3 months earlier. Caroline stood on that tarmac in the August heat, watching her marriage take off without her, watching 5 years of lies fly away into the clouds. But here's what her husband didn't know. Here's what he never bothered to find out. The plane he chartered to abandon his pregnant wife, it belonged to her mother, and her mother, she owned the entire airline. What happened next will shock you. What happened after that will make you cheer. And by the end of this story, you'll understand why some betrayals become the greatest gifts we ever receive. This is the story of Caroline Ashford, and it starts with a text message that changed everything. The jet engine screamed to life. Caroline Ashford Brennan pressed her palm against her swollen belly and watched her husband wave goodbye from the stairs of the Gulf Stream. The August heat shimmered off the tarmac, distorting everything like a fever dream, making it look unreal, making it look impossible. She blinked. Once, twice, 3 times. Derek was still walking away, and he wasn't alone. A woman appeared behind him on the aircraft stairs, blonde hair catching the afternoon sunlight like spun gold, a red dress that hugged every curve of her body, designer sunglasses pushed up on her head, confident stride, perfect posture, familiar, so familiar it made Carrie's stomach turn. Sloan Whitfield, his marketing director, the woman who had sat across from them at dinner parties. The woman who had sent Carrie a baby shower gift 3 months ago. A cashmere blanket, pale yellow, with a handwritten note that said, "Congratulations to the happy family." Happy family? The words echoed in Carrie's mind like a cruel joke. Derek didn't look back. Not once. Not even a glance over his shoulder. He climbed the stairs with the confidence of a man who had already moved on, who had already made his decision, who had already closed this chapter of his life. Sloan did look back. Just once. Just for a moment. And she smiled. It wasn't a triumphant smile. It wasn't gloating or cruel. It was worse than that. It was the smile of a woman who had already won, who knew the outcome before the game even started, who had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. The baby kicked, hard, right under Carrie's ribs, like a warning, like a question, like asking what was happening to their world. Carrie couldn't move. Her legs had turned to concrete. Her cream linen dress stuck to her back in the August humidity. Sweat trickled down her spine, pooling at the base of her back. The smell of jet fuel burned her nostrils. Sharp, acrid, the smell of departure. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. They were supposed to fly to Martha's Vineyard today. 5th anniversary. Derek had planned everything. He'd been talking about it for weeks. The reservation at the Charlotte Inn, where they spent their honeymoon. The couple's massage at the spa. The sunset dinner on the beach where he first told her he loved her. He told her to meet him at the airport instead of their house. Said it would be more romantic that way. Said he wanted to surprise her. Said he had something special planned. Some surprise. The Gulfstream's door began to close. Carrie watched it seal shut with a soft mechanical hiss. Final. Irrevocable. Like a coffin lid. A flight attendant approached from the terminal building. Young, maybe 25. Nervous expression. Her name tag read Jessica, and her hands were trembling slightly. "Mrs. Brennan?" Jessica's voice was barely above a whisper. "There must be some confusion. Your husband said you weren't coming." The words didn't make sense. Carrie heard them, but they didn't compute. Her brain refused to process them. "What did you say?" "Mr. Brennan informed us that plans had changed." Jessica was wringing her hands now, clearly uncomfortable, clearly aware that she was delivering devastating news. "He said you weren't feeling well, that you'd decided to stay home, that you wanted him to go ahead without you." Carrie repeated the words silently. Weren't coming, weren't feeling well. Go ahead without you. Lies. All lies. She had felt fine this morning. Better than fine. Excited. She'd spent 2 hours choosing the right outfit for the trip. Comfortable but elegant. Appropriate for a private jet, but not too formal. She'd packed her bag with care. her husband's favorite perfume, the lingerie she'd bought specifically for this anniversary. "There's been a mistake," Carrie heard herself say. Her voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. "I'm supposed to be on that plane. My husband is expecting me." Jessica's expression shifted from nervous to something worse. Pity. Pure, undiluted pity. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry, but—" The jet began to taxi. The engine noise grew louder, drowning out Jessica's words. Carrie watched the plane move away from her, watched the distance grow. 20 feet, 50 feet, 100 feet. Watched her husband disappear behind tinted windows. Her phone buzzed in her hand. She'd forgotten she was holding it. A text message. From Derek. The screen was cracked. She didn't remember dropping it, but there it was. A spider web of fractures across the glass, like her life, like everything she thought she knew. She read the message through the cracks. "I'm sorry it had to happen this way. Sloan and I are in love. We have been for a long time. I've already had papers drawn up. The house is yours. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. My lawyer will be in touch." Carrie read it once. Read it twice. Read it 3 times. Lock, unlock, lock, unlock, lock, unlock. The text didn't change. The words didn't rearrange themselves into something that made sense. Something that didn't destroy everything she thought her life was. Her water bottle slipped from her fingers. She didn't even feel it leave her hand. It hit the concrete and shattered. Glass and water everywhere, sparkling in the afternoon sun like diamonds. Like the diamond on her finger that suddenly felt like a brand, a mark of ownership, a reminder of every lie she'd believed. 8 months pregnant, standing on a tarmac, watching her husband fly away with another woman. This was how her marriage ended. Not with a conversation, not with tears or arguments or therapy sessions, or one last attempt to work things out. Not with any of the things she'd seen in movies or read about in books. With a text message and a wave goodbye and another woman's smile. Behind her, a voice, deep, male, concerned. "Mrs. Brennan, I'm Captain Russell Webb. I'm a senior pilot with the charter service." Carrie turned slowly. The movement felt like it took hours, like time had become thick and heavy, resistant to any attempt to move through it. The pilot was older, late 40s, maybe early 50s, distinguished in his uniform. Gray at his temples, deep lines around his eyes that suggested years of staring into the sun from 30,000 feet. But his eyes were kind, worried. "Ma'am, I need you to come inside. Your mother is on line 1. Carrie stared at him. The words took a long time to process. "My mother?" "Yes, ma'am. Eleanor Ashford. She's been trying to reach you for the past 20 minutes. When you didn't answer your cell phone, she called the terminal directly." Of course she did. Eleanor Ashford always found a way to reach the people she needed to reach. Distance didn't matter. Circumstances didn't matter. If Eleanor Ashford wanted to talk to someone, she found a way. That was how you built a $4.2 billion airline empire from nothing, by refusing to accept that anything was impossible. Carrie followed Captain Webb into the private terminal on legs that didn't feel like her own. Her heels clicked against the marble floor. The sound echoed in the empty space. Sharp, lonely, final. The air conditioning hit her like a wall. Cold. Too cold after the August heat. Her skin prickled with goosebumps. The sweat on her back turned to ice. The terminal lounge was empty, leather chairs arranged in careful groupings, fresh flowers on every table, a full bar that no one was using. The smell of expensive perfume lingered from whoever had been there before. Everything was beautiful. Everything was perfect. Everything was designed to make travelers feel important and pampered and valued. Carrie had never felt more worthless in her life. Captain Webb led her to a small office behind the main lounge. A phone sat on the desk. The old-fashioned kind, attached to a wall with a curly cord. She hadn't seen one of those in years. Everything was wireless now. Everything was mobile. Everything was designed to keep you connected, except her connection to her husband had just been severed, with a text message on a cracked screen. "Your mother is on line 1, Captain Webb said. He was keeping his voice neutral, professional, but she could see the discomfort in his eyes. He knew something was wrong. Everyone probably knew something was wrong. There was no way to hide the abandoned pregnant wife standing on the tarmac watching her husband fly away. Thank you. She picked up the receiver. It felt heavy in her hand. Everything felt heavy. Mom? Her voice cracked on the single syllable. Caroline. Eleanor Ashford's voice was steady, controlled. The voice of a woman who had built an empire from nothing, who had survived the death of her husband, who had raised 2 children while running one of the largest airlines in the country, who had seen things that would break most people and refused to break herself. Tell me exactly what happened. So Carrie did. Every detail. The tarmac, the Gulf Stream, Derek climbing the stairs, Sloan appearing behind him, the flight attendant's nervous explanation, the text message. The words came out in fragments, broken sentences, half-finished thoughts. Eleanor was silent throughout, not interrupting, not asking questions, just listening. When Carrie finished, the silence stretched. 4 seconds. She counted. 4 seconds of nothing but the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of planes on the runway. Then Eleanor spoke. That plane doesn't land without my permission. Stay where you are. I'm sending a car. The line went dead. Carrie stared at the phone in her hand. The receiver buzzed with the disconnect tone, a flat, lifeless sound. Her mother's words echoed in her head. That plane doesn't land without my permission. Most people would think that was an empty threat, a dramatic statement from a worried mother. The kind of thing people said when they were angry and helpless and wanted to feel like they had some control over an uncontrollable situation. Most people didn't know Eleanor Ashford, and neither apparently did Derek Brennan. Captain Webb appeared in the doorway. Mrs. Brennan, can I get you anything? Water, tea, something stronger? The plane my husband is on, Carrie said slowly. The words felt strange in her mouth, distant, like she was asking about someone else's husband, someone else's life. Who owns it? Captain Webb's expression flickered. Something passed behind his eyes. Recognition, understanding, a piece of a puzzle clicking into place. Ashford Continental, ma'am. It's a charter service we operate through our private aviation division. The aircraft is part of our luxury fleet. Carrie almost laughed. Almost. Derek had chartered a plane to leave her, to fly off into the sunset with his mistress. His grand romantic gesture of abandonment. And he'd chosen her mother's airline to do it. The irony was so sharp it could cut glass. He didn't know. That was the thing, he had no idea. 5 years of marriage, 5 years of dinners and holidays and Sunday mornings in bed, 5 years of talking about their dreams and their fears and their plans for the future. And he never knew who she really was, because she never told him. Carrie sank into one of the leather chairs in the main lounge. The baby kicked again, softer this time. Like a question, like asking what was wrong, like wondering why Mommy's heartbeat had gone so fast and then so slow. Everything, sweetheart, everything is wrong, but we're going to be okay. Somehow. I don't know how yet, but we're going to be okay. Her phone buzzed again. She looked at it through the cracked screen. Another text from Derek. Please don't call me. I need space. This is hard for me too. My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce papers. This is better for everyone. You'll see. Better for everyone. The audacity of those words. The absolute breathtaking audacity. He had left her, 8 months pregnant, on a tarmac in front of witnesses, flew off with another woman, and he had the nerve to say it was better for everyone. Carrie typed a response, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. There were no words, nothing she could say that would change anything, nothing that would make him understand what he'd done, nothing that would turn back time and undo the last 5 years. She put the phone face down on the table beside her. She couldn't look at it anymore, couldn't look at his name on her screen. The door to the terminal opened. Carrie looked up. Her best friend Margot Callahan stood in the doorway, dark hair pulled back in a severe ponytail, power suit, lawyer face, the expression she wore in court when she was about to destroy someone on cross-examination. But her eyes were soft, worried, the eyes of the woman who had been Carrie's roommate in college, who had held her hair when she drank too much at parties, who had talked her through her first heartbreak and her second and her third. I've been tracking the flight, Margot said. She crossed the room in quick strides, sat down beside Carrie, took her hand. It stopped, landed in Halifax. Carrie stared at her. What? Mechanical issues, according to the official report. The aircraft has been flagged for immediate inspection. They're stuck in Canada until further notice. There were no mechanical issues. I know. Margot squeezed her hand. Your mother made a phone call. Several phone calls, actually. The plane was grounded about 15 minutes ago. My mother. Your mother. The first tear fell, then another. Then Carrie couldn't stop. She had held it together on the tarmac, held it together reading the text messages, held it together talking to her mother. But this was too much. Her mother had grounded the plane, had reached out across the distance and said no, had used her power and her influence and her empire to do what Carrie couldn't do for herself, stop him. It wouldn't bring him back. It wouldn't undo what he'd done. It wouldn't erase the betrayal or heal the wound or make any of this okay. But it was something, a small victory in a day of devastating losses. Margot held her, didn't say anything, just held her while she cried. 8 months pregnant, abandoned on a tarmac, husband flying away with his mistress, and somehow, impossibly, her mother had grounded the plane. This was her life now. Carrie wasn't sure whether to laugh or scream, so she did both. Halifax Stanfield International Airport, 4:37 in the afternoon. Derek Brennan stood in a sterile waiting room and tried to understand what the hell was happening. 20 minutes ago, he had been on top of the world, sipping champagne at 30,000 feet. Sloane beside him, her hand on his thigh. The future spread out before them like a golden highway. Everything was falling into place. Finally, after 3 years of planning and scheming and waiting, then the pilot's voice came over the intercom. Apologetic, professional, devastating. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a minor mechanical issue that requires immediate inspection. We'll be making an unscheduled landing in Halifax. We apologize for any inconvenience. Minor mechanical issue. Derek had flown private jets for 10 years. He knew what that meant. A warning light, a sensor malfunction, something that could probably be fixed in 20 minutes with a screwdriver and a software reset. Not something that required an emergency landing in Canada. Now he stood in this sterile room with its fluorescent lights and its plastic chairs and its vending machines that looked like they hadn't been restocked since the 90s. And no one would tell him anything. The pilot had apologized profusely. FAA regulations, he said. The aircraft had been flagged for immediate inspection by the parent company. Standard procedure, he said. These things happen. Except Derek had flown private for years. Dozens of flights, hundreds of flights. These things didn't happen. Not like this, not when you paid $400,000 for a charter. This is unacceptable, Derek said for the fourth time. His voice was louder now, angrier. The charm he usually deployed was wearing thin. I have places to be, people expecting me. The pilot's expression didn't change. His name was something forgettable. Johnson or Jackson or something equally bland. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back like a soldier delivering bad news to a general. I understand your frustration, sir, but Ashford Continental owns this aircraft, and they have requested its immediate return to Boston. The inspection is mandatory. Derek felt the first prickle of unease, a cold finger tracing down his spine. Ashford Continental? What does that have to do with anything? That's the parent company of our charter service, sir. All our aircraft are owned and maintained by Ashford Continental. But I booked it through Prestige Air. That's who I paid. Prestige Air is a subsidiary, sir, a brand name. The actual company is Ashford Continental. Derek's mind was racing now. Ashford Continental. The name was familiar. He'd seen it on planes at the airport, on billboards, on the sides of trucks. But it had never meant anything to him. Just another airline. Just another corporate logo in a world full of corporate logos. What does Ashford Continental have to do with my flight? He demanded. The pilot looked at him, really looked at him. And Derek saw something in the man's eyes that he didn't like. Something that looked almost like pity. Sir, are you not aware? Ashford Continental is your wife's family company. The world stopped spinning. Derek felt the blood drain from his face, felt his heart stutter and skip, felt the ground beneath his feet turn to sand. That's impossible. His voice came out strangled, weak. Carolyn works for a nonprofit. She doesn't have any family money. She told me. He stopped because he realized suddenly and horribly that Caroline had never actually told him that. He had assumed. He had looked at her modest apartment when they met, her second-hand car, her job at a nonprofit that paid barely above minimum wage. And he had assumed she had never corrected him. She had never told him the truth. Sloane appeared beside him. Her face was pale. The confidence that had carried her through the past 3 years was evaporating. Derek, what's going on? He couldn't answer, couldn't speak, could barely breathe. He pulled out his phone. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely type. He opened Google, typed Ashford Continental Airlines CEO. The results loaded. Eleanor Ashford, founder and chief executive officer. Net worth $4.2 billion. $4.2 billion. He scrolled through the images. Company headshots, magazine covers, charity galas. And there, third row, a photo from 3 years ago. Eleanor Ashford at the Boston Children's Hospital fundraiser, standing beside her daughter Caroline, his wife. Derek Brennan had married into one of the richest families in America, one of the most powerful families in American business, a family that owned planes and hotels and airports and God knows what else. And he never knew. 5 years of marriage, and Caroline had never said a word. Why? The answer came immediately, crashing through his shock like a wrecking ball. Because she wanted to be loved for herself, because she didn't trust anyone with the truth, because she was testing him, waiting to see if he was worthy, and he had failed, spectacularly, publicly, catastrophically. Oh God, Sloane whispered beside him. Her face was white as paper. Her hands were trembling. Derek, what did we do? He couldn't answer, couldn't think, couldn't process what was happening. 3 years of planning, 3 years of careful manipulation, 3 years of playing the long game, and it was all falling apart in a waiting room in Halifax. Mr. Brennan? The pilot's voice cut through his spiral. There's a phone call for you. You can take it in the office. Derek walked to the office like a man walking to his execution. Each step felt like it took an hour. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry insects. The air smelled like stale coffee and desperation. He picked up the phone. Hello? His voice cracked on the word. Mr. Brennan. A woman's voice. Cold. Precise. Each word delivered like a surgical incision. This is Eleanor Ashford. I believe we need to have a conversation. Derek's throat closed. All the words he had rehearsed over the years, all the charm and the manipulation and the smooth talking, vanished. Mrs. Ashford, I can explain. I doubt that very much. Eleanor's voice could have frozen the sun. You left my daughter, my pregnant daughter, standing on a tarmac while you flew off with your mistress in my airplane. I didn't know the plane was... You didn't know a lot of things, Mr. Brennan. The temperature of her voice dropped another 10 degrees. You didn't know that I've been watching you for 6 months. You didn't know that I have photographs of every hotel room you shared with Miss Whitfield. Every dinner, every weekend getaway, every lie you told my daughter while you were sleeping with another woman. Derek felt his legs weaken. He grabbed the edge of the desk for support. The room was spinning. How did you... I know everything. Eleanor paused. Let the words sink in. I know about the accounts in the Cayman Islands. I know about the $340,000 you've been siphoning from joint accounts. I know about the divorce papers your lawyer drafted 6 months ago. That was just, I know about the email you sent to Miss Whitfield. The one where you said our daughter was the perfect mark. The one where you said you'd give her exactly what she wanted. Derek's knees buckled. He sank into the chair behind the desk. His phone clattered to the floor. He didn't pick it up. She knew everything, every scheme, every lie, every manipulation for 6 months. And she had said nothing, done nothing, just watched and waited and gathered evidence. Here's what's going to happen, Eleanor continued. Her voice was calm now, almost pleasant, the voice of a woman who held all the cards and knew it. You're going to stay in Halifax until I decide what to do with you. You're going to instruct your lawyer to cooperate fully with mine, and you're going to pray that my daughter is more forgiving than I am. Mrs. Ashford, please, if we could just talk. We are talking, Mr. Brennan, and this is the last conversation we'll ever have. Another pause. Do you know what the prenuptial agreement you signed says about infidelity? Derek's blood ran cold. The prenup. He'd barely glanced at it before signing, too confident, too eager to lock down what he thought was his ticket to the Ashford fortune. Section 7, paragraph 3, Eleanor said, in the event of documented infidelity by either party, the offending party forfeits all claims to shared assets, real property, and investments accumulated during the marriage. I didn't. You signed it 5 years ago, and I have 6 months of documented infidelity. Eleanor's voice hardened. You get nothing, not the house, not the cars, not the investment portfolio, not 1 cent. It's exactly fair, and it's exactly what you deserve. Eleanor paused one final time. Goodbye, Mr. Brennan. Enjoy Halifax. The line went dead. Derek sat in the small office for a long time. Minutes, maybe hours. He couldn't tell. Time had lost all meaning. His entire life had just collapsed. Every plan, every scheme, every carefully constructed lie. Gone. Sloane appeared in the doorway. Derek? What did she say? What's happening? He looked at her, this woman he had risked everything for. This woman who was supposed to be his partner in the next phase of his life. It's over, he said. His voice sounded dead, hollow, like it belonged to someone else. Everything is over. Back in Boston, in the private terminal lounge, Carrie sat with Margot and tried to process what her friend was telling her. The plane is grounded in Halifax, Margot said. No commercial flights will book him. The airline computers keep malfunctioning every time he tries to make a reservation. Every rental car company within 50 miles is suddenly unavailable. My mother's doing? Do you even have to ask? Carrie shook her head. Eleanor Ashford's reach extended far beyond her airline. Decades of business relationships, favors owed, connections cultivated. When Eleanor wanted something done, it got done. What about Sloane? And Carrie asked. Is she stuck there too? For now, though I imagine that's the least of her problems. Carrie thought about Sloane, the woman who had smiled at her from the plane stairs, the woman who had been sleeping with her husband for God knows how long. 3 years, she would later learn. 3 years of lies and betrayal and carefully orchestrated deception. But right now, all she knew was the smile, the red dress, the confidence of a woman who thought she had won. I never told him, Carrie said quietly. The words felt like a confession. About Mom, about the money, about any of it. Margot's expression softened. I know, honey. I thought I was being smart. I thought I was protecting myself. Carrie laughed. It came out broken and bitter. I wanted him to love me for me, not for my mother's fortune, not for the planes and the houses and the money. That's not stupid. That's human. It felt stupid today. Standing on that tarmac, watching him fly away. Carrie closed her eyes. If I had told him, would things have been different? Margot was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully, the lawyer in her weighing evidence before speaking. No, she said finally, it wouldn't have been different. It would have been worse. How could it possibly be worse? Because then you would have known for certain that he only stayed for the money. Margot reached out and took her hand. At least this way, you know the truth. He didn't leave because of what you are. He left because of what he thought you weren't. Carrie opened her eyes, looked at her best friend, this woman who had been by her side through everything. I'm not crazy, she whispered. The words came out fierce, desperate, a declaration. He really did this, in front of everyone. I'm not imagining it. I'm not overreacting. He actually left me on a tarmac and flew away with another woman. You're not crazy, Margot confirmed. He's a monster, and he's about to find out what happens when you cross Eleanor Ashford. The baby kicked. Carrie placed her hand on her belly, felt the flutter of movement beneath her skin. 8 months pregnant, abandoned by her husband, surrounded by the wreckage of her marriage. But not alone, never alone. She had her mother, her best friend, her unborn child, and she had something Derek would never have again. The truth. The Ashford estate sat on 27 acres in the hills west of Boston, white columns rising 3 stories high, manicured gardens that had been featured in Architectural Digest, a circular driveway lined with oak trees that had been planted by Carrie's great-grandfather in 1923. Carrie hadn't lived here in 15 years, not since she left for Princeton at 18, desperate to find her own identity apart from her family's wealth. But as the black sedan pulled through the wrought iron gates and up the long driveway, she felt something loosen in her chest. Home. The word resonated somewhere deep inside her. Past the pain, past the betrayal, past the shock and the anger and the devastating hurt. Home. The front door opened before the car came to a complete stop. Eleanor Ashford stood in the doorway. 61 years old, silver hair pulled back in an elegant chignon, wearing slacks and a cashmere sweater despite the August heat. Eyes that had seen everything and were surprised by nothing. Carrie got out of the car. Her legs were unsteady. The pregnancy weight threw off her balance. 8 months of carrying another life had changed her center of gravity in more ways than one. Caroline. Mom. Eleanor crossed the threshold and wrapped her arms around her daughter, gently, carefully, mindful of the belly between them, but firmly enough that Carrie felt held, protected, safe. I'm so sorry, Eleanor whispered into her daughter's hair. I should have told you sooner. I should have found a way. Carrie pulled back, looked at her mother's face, saw the guilt there, the regret, the fierce protective love that had always defined their relationship. Told me what? Come inside. We have a lot to discuss. You need to eat something first and rest. The baby needs you to rest. The foyer smelled like Carrie's childhood. Lemon polish that the housekeeping staff had used for 3 generations. Fresh flowers from the garden arranged in crystal vases. The soft ticking of the grandfather clock that had stood in the corner since before she was born. She paused by the clock, listened to its steady rhythm. Tick, tock, tick, tock. The same sound she had fallen asleep to every night until she was 18. The same sound that had accompanied her first steps, her first words, her first heartbreak. Some things never changed, even when everything else did. They walked to the study, Eleanor's domain. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with first editions and leather-bound volumes. Leather chairs arranged around a fireplace that had warmed 4 generations of Ashfords. A portrait of Carrie's father above the mantel. Robert Ashford, dead 20 years now. Heart attack at 53. Too young, too sudden, too devastating to fully comprehend even now. He would have hated Derek. Carrie knew that with absolute certainty. Her father had possessed an unerring instinct for character. He could read people the way some people read books. One conversation and he would have seen through Derek's charm to the emptiness beneath. But her father was gone, had been gone for 20 years, and Carrie had made her own choices, her own mistakes. Sit, Eleanor commanded. She pressed a button on her desk. Helen, please bring the tray. Moments later, Helen Mercer appeared in the doorway, Eleanor's executive assistant for 30 years. 58 years old, sharp features, shrewd eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She knew where all the bodies were buried, as the saying went. She had helped bury most of them. Mrs. Brennan, Helen's voice was warm despite her professional demeanor. I'm so sorry about what happened. If there's anything I can do. Thank you, Helen. The tray held sandwiches, fresh fruit, a pot of herbal tea, Carrie's favorites from childhood. Comfort food for a woman who desperately needed comfort. Eat, Eleanor commanded, then we talk. Carrie took a bite of sandwich. It tasted like cardboard, like sawdust, like nothing at all. Her taste buds had apparently joined the rest of her senses in shutting down. But she chewed and swallowed anyway. For the baby. For the tiny life inside her that needed nutrition regardless of its mother's emotional state. How long have you known? She asked between bites. About Derek. About the affair. Eleanor didn't pretend to misunderstand, didn't deflect or soften the truth. 6 months since you told me you were pregnant. 6 months. Carrie set down the sandwich, stared at her mother. You knew for 6 months and you didn't tell me? I was gathering evidence, building a case. Eleanor's voice was matter of fact, the voice of a businesswoman explaining a corporate strategy. I hired a private investigator the week after your pregnancy announcement. He documented everything. Every meeting, every hotel room, every lie your husband told while he was sleeping with another woman. So you let me believe the lie instead for 6 months. I let you have peace for as long as possible. Eleanor leaned forward. Her eyes were intense, fierce. I was planning to tell you after the baby came. I didn't want you to go through the pregnancy with this weight on your shoulders. I didn't want the stress to harm you or the baby. Protect me? Carrie felt something hot rising in her chest, anger. At Derek, at her mother, at herself, at the whole goddamn world. He left me on a tarmac, mother, in front of everyone, in front of witnesses. How is that protecting me? I didn't anticipate that. For the first time, Eleanor looked uncertain, vulnerable, human. I knew he was planning to leave. The investigator found the divorce papers his lawyer had drafted. I knew it was coming, but I didn't know it would be today. I didn't know he would choose our anniversary. I didn't know he would be so cruel. The baby kicked, hard, like punctuation on her mother's words. Carrie rubbed her belly, tried to calm the storm inside, both storms, the one in her heart and the one in her womb. What do you have? She asked finally. The evidence, all of it. What do you have? Eleanor stood, walked to her desk, opened a drawer and retrieved a folder. Thick, heavy, filled with what looked like hundreds of pages. Photographs, hotel receipts, credit card statements, emails he thought were deleted. She placed the folder on the table between them. Phone records, text messages, security camera footage from the hotels. Everything you need to destroy him. Carrie stared at the folder. Didn't touch it. Couldn't touch it. What do you want me to do with this? Whatever you want. Eleanor's voice softened. The businesswoman faded. The mother emerged. This is your decision, Carolyn. Your marriage, your life, your future. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but you have an opinion. I always have an opinion. A ghost of a smile crossed Eleanor's face. My opinion is that Derek Brennan is a parasite. He found you at that charity gala and he saw what he wanted to see. An opportunity, a path to something bigger. He didn't know about you, about the money. Not at first, but he found out. Within weeks of meeting you, he knew exactly who you were. Eleanor pulled another document from the folder. This is an email he sent to Sloan Whitfield, 2 weeks before he met you at the gala. Carrie took the paper. Her hands were trembling. Found the mark. Carolyn Ashford, Eleanor Ashford's daughter, works at a nonprofit to hide the connection. Perfect target. She wants to be loved for herself, not her money. I'll give her exactly what she wants. The room spun. The words blurred. Carrie had to read them 3 times before they sank in. He knew. He knew who she was from the beginning. The meeting at the charity gala. The charming smile. The questions about her work, her dreams, her life. The way he seemed so interested in her as a person. All of it calculated, all of it deliberate. All of it a lie. He married me for your money, Carrie said slowly. The words felt foreign in her mouth. He never loved me, not for one single moment. No, Eleanor's voice was gentle but honest. He never loved you. Carrie closed her eyes, drew a deep breath, tried to find solid ground in a world that had suddenly become quicksand. Why didn't it work? She asked. His plan. You said he wanted access to your money. Why didn't he get it? Because you never told him about me. You never introduced us. You never opened the doors he expected you to open. Eleanor sat down beside her daughter, took her hand. He was trying to get investment from Ashford Continental's venture capital arm. His company needed funding. He thought marriage to you would guarantee a meeting with me, a chance to pitch his business. But I know, you never mentioned me, never asked for favors, never used your family name for anything. Eleanor squeezed her hand. You wanted to make your own way in the world, and that drove him crazy. So he found another angle. The baby, Eleanor nodded. There's another email from 4 months ago, after you told him you were pregnant. Carrie didn't want to read it, didn't want to know, but she had to. She took the paper, read the words. Once the baby is born, I'll file. She'll be too overwhelmed to fight. I'll get partial custody. which means access to the Ashford Trust. The kid is worth more than the marriage ever was. The kid, not our child, not the baby. The kid, like she was carrying cargo, an investment, a means to an end. The trust isn't in my name, Carrie said. Her voice sounded distant, hollow. It never was. No. Eleanor took the email back. Your father set it up before he died. The principal goes directly to any children you have when they turn 25. You're the custodian, not the beneficiary. Derek would never have gotten access. Not through custody. Not through any legal means. He didn't know that. He didn't know a lot of things. Eleanor's voice hardened. He thought he was clever. He thought he had it all figured out. He had no idea who he was dealing with. The grandfather clock chimed, 5 o'clock. The sun was starting to set outside the study windows. Golden light streaming through the glass, beautiful, peaceful, completely at odds with the devastation inside Carrie's heart. I need to be alone, she said, just for a little while. I need to think. Of course, Eleanor stood. Your room is ready? Helen made up the bed with fresh sheets. Everything is exactly as you left it. My room? The one you grew up in. I never changed it. I always hoped you'd come back someday. Eleanor paused at the door. I just didn't want it to be like this. Carrie walked up the stairs alone. Her hand trailed along the banister. The same polished wood she had touched every day as a child, running down for breakfast, sneaking up after curfew, racing her brother Teddy to see who could reach the top first. Her bedroom door was closed. She stood in front of it for a long moment, gathering her courage, preparing herself. Then she turned the handle and stepped inside. Everything was exactly as she left it, 15 years ago, when she was 18 and desperate to escape. Lacrosse trophies on the shelf, 4 state championships, a full-ride scholarship to Princeton that she didn't need but accepted anyway because she wanted to earn something on her own. Photographs with friends, girls she had lost touch with years ago, lives that had diverged and scattered and gone their separate ways. A Princeton pennant above the desk, orange and black, faded now but still hanging in the same spot. And on the nightstand, a photograph of her father, Robert Ashford, smiling at the camera, holding a 5-year-old Carrie on his shoulders at the beach. She had been so happy then, so certain that the world was good and people were kind and everything would work out in the end. When had she lost that certainty? When had she started building walls and hiding truths and testing people to see if they were worthy? When her father died. That was when, 20 years ago, and she was still living in the shadow of that loss. Carrie walked to the bathroom, turned on the faucet, watched the tub fill with water. Then she climbed in, fully clothed, the water soaked through her cream linen dress. The fabric turned heavy and cold against her skin. She didn't care. The baby kicked, once, twice. A third time, she placed both hands on her belly, felt the life inside her, the tiny person who had no idea what was happening, who was completely innocent of all of this, who deserved so much better than a father who saw her as a meal ticket. It's just us now, she whispered to her belly. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I'm so sorry, but it's just us. The faucet dripped. Drip, drip, drip. The sound echoed in the tile bathroom. Steady, relentless. Like a heartbeat, like time passing. Like the world continuing to turn even when you wanted it to stop. Carrie lay in the bathtub for a long time. The water turned cold around her. Her fingers pruned. Her teeth started to chatter. But she didn't move. Couldn't move. She just lay there and let the truth wash over her. Her marriage was over. Her husband had never loved her. Everything she thought she had built was a lie. And somehow she had to find a way to survive. For herself, for her daughter, for the future she couldn't even begin to imagine. Morning came whether she wanted it to or not. Carrie woke in her childhood bed, disoriented and aching. For one blissful moment, she forgot everything. Forgot the tarmac, forgot Derek, forgot the text message and the emails and the devastating truth. Then memory crashed back like a wave, cold, brutal, inescapable. She lay there for a long time, staring at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the plaster, the same cracks she had counted as a teenager when sleep wouldn't come, When she was worrying about college applications or boy problems, or whether she would ever be anything more than Eleanor Ashford's daughter. Those problems seemed laughably simple now. A knock at the door. "Caroline?" Her mother's voice, calm, measured. "Graham is here. He needs to speak with you." Graham Hollister, the family attorney. Carrie had known him her entire life. He had handled her father's estate, her trust fund, every legal matter the Ashford family had faced for 30 years. If Graham was here, it meant the serious work was beginning. She got up, showered, the hot water helped, woke her up, reminded her that she was still alive, still functioning, still capable of putting one foot in front of the other. She put on clothes that Helen must have brought from her house. Fresh, clean, professional, like armor. Downstairs, Graham Hollister was spreading documents across the dining room table. Silver hair, perfectly styled. Tailored suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Wire-rimmed glasses perched on his nose. But his face was kind. His eyes were sympathetic. He had known Carrie since she was a baby, had bounced her on his knee at family gatherings, had helped her with her law school applications even though she had ultimately chosen a different path. "Carolyn?" He stood when she entered, crossed the room, took her hands in his. "I'm so deeply sorry for what's happened. If there is anything I can do." "Thank you, Graham. Please sit. I'm afraid we have much to discuss." Eleanor was already seated at the head of the table, tea service in front of her, untouched. Her face was composed, but Carrie could see the tension in her jaw, the way her fingers gripped the arm of her chair. Her mother was worried. That alone was enough to frighten Carrie. Graham returned to his documents, cleared his throat, assumed his professional demeanor. "I've been reviewing the situation since yesterday afternoon," he said. "I've spoken with my colleagues in family law. I've examined the prenuptial agreement and the marital assets. I've reviewed the evidence your mother's investigator compiled. And what I've found is troubling, more troubling than I initially anticipated." Carrie felt her throat tighten. "Show me." Graham slid a document across the table. Bank statements, Cayman Islands, an account number she had never seen, a balance that made her stomach turn. "He opened this account 2 weeks after you announced your pregnancy," Graham explained. "He's been moving money from your joint accounts ever since. Small amounts at first, a few thousand here, a few thousand there, then larger. In total, he's transferred approximately $342,000. $342,000. From the household account, the investment portfolio you held jointly, the savings account you opened together when you purchased the house." Graham's voice was gentle but firm. He was systematic, careful, designed to avoid triggering any automatic alerts or flags. Carrie stared at the numbers, black and white on the page, undeniable. "He was stealing from me while I was pregnant with his child. He was stealing from me." "Yes," Graham paused, "but that's not all." Of course it wasn't. Of course there was more. Graham pulled out another stack of documents, thicker this time, more damning. "The affair with Sloane Whitfield. Your mother told you it began before he met you. That's true, but the full picture is more complicated." "More complicated how?" "Sloane Whitfield was not just his mistress. She was his partner. In every sense of the word." Graham spread photographs across the table. Derek and Sloane at restaurants. Derek and Sloane at hotels. Derek and Sloane looking at apartments. They planned this together from the beginning. The affair was never a secret between them. It was a strategy. Carrie looked at the photographs. Her husband with another woman. Smiling, laughing, touching, living a parallel life that she knew nothing about. "What kind of strategy?" Graham exchanged a glance with Eleanor. Something passed between them, an unspoken communication. "His company was failing," Graham said. "Brennan Technologies, the tech startup he was so proud of. It's been hemorrhaging money for 3 years. He needed a massive infusion of capital to survive. He was trying to get investment from Ashford Continental," Eleanor added, "from our venture capital arm. He thought if he married you, I would feel obligated to help him. Family loyalty and all that. But you never asked. You never mentioned me. You never opened any doors." Eleanor's voice was tight. So he adapted, found another angle. The baby, Carrie said, understanding dawning. He thought he could get access to my trust fund through the baby. Through custody, Graham confirmed. He planned to file for divorce shortly after the birth. While you were exhausted and overwhelmed and vulnerable, he expected to negotiate shared custody of the child and use that custody to access the trust. Exactly, the Ashford Family Trust includes provisions for the care and education of any minor children. As a custodial parent, Derek would have been entitled to draw on those funds. Carrie felt sick, actually physically sick. The sandwich from yesterday threatened to make a reappearance. He was going to use our daughter as an ATM, a way to extract money from my family. Yes. Did he even want her? The baby? Did he ever want to be a father? Graham was quiet for a moment. Then he slid one more document across the table. This is an email from Derek to Sloan, sent 4 months ago. The day after you had your 20-week ultrasound. Carrie read the email. The ultrasound looked good. Healthy baby. That's step 1 complete. Once it's born and I have custody rights, we're set. The kid is worth more than the marriage ever was. Just need to play the long game a little longer. The kid, step 1, the long game, her daughter, her precious unborn daughter, reduced to a line item in a business plan. Carrie stood abruptly, her chair scraped against the floor. She walked to the window and stared out at the garden. Her father's roses, red and white and pink, blooming in the August heat. He never wanted any of it, she said. Her voice sounded strange, distant, like it belonged to someone else. Not me, not the baby, not the marriage. None of it was real. No, Eleanor said from behind her. None of it was real. The doorbell rang. Helen appeared in the doorway moments later. Her expression was carefully neutral, but Carrie could see the distaste beneath the surface. Mrs. Ashford? Patricia Brennan is here. She's demanding to see Caroline. Derek's mother. Here. Now at her mother's house. Eleanor's face hardened. Tell her she's not welcome here. Wait. Carrie turned from the window. Let her in. Carolyn, I want to hear what she has to say. I want to look her in the eye. Patricia Brennan entered the dining room like she owned it. 64 years old. Perfectly styled blonde hair. Designer dress. Pearls. The face of a woman who had never been denied anything in her life. She looked at the documents spread across the table. The photographs, the bank statements. Her expression didn't change. Caroline, her voice dripped fake sympathy. My poor dear, this has all been such a terrible misunderstanding. Has it? Derek made a mistake. Men do, you know. They're weak creatures. Surely we can discuss this like civilized people. Find some way to move forward. Carrie felt something shift inside her. The numbness that had protected her since the tarmac began to crack. Something hot was rising up beneath it. Something that felt like rage. A mistake, she repeated. He abandoned me on a tarmac, in front of dozens of witnesses, while I'm 8 months pregnant with his child. That's what you're calling a mistake? Patricia's expression flickered, just for a moment. Then the mask was back in place. I'm sure he had his reasons. Perhaps if you had been more attentive to his needs. Get out. Excuse me? Get out of this house. Carrie's voice was steady, cold, steel wrapped in velvet. You raised a con man and a thief. You enabled every lie he ever told. And now you have the audacity to stand in my mother's home and blame me for his choices. How dare you speak to me? I dare because I have 342,000 reasons. Carrie stepped closer to her mother-in-law, former mother-in-law. I dare because I have emails and photographs and bank statements. I dare because your son was planning to steal from me, from my family, from his own unborn child. Patricia's face went red, then white. She looked at Eleanor as if expecting support, as if expecting one mother to take another mother's side. Eleanor smiled. It was not a kind smile. You heard my daughter. Get out of my house and don't come back. Patricia Brennan left without another word. The front door slammed behind her with a satisfying thud. Carrie stood in the silence that followed. Her heart was pounding, her hands were trembling, but she felt something she hadn't felt since the tarmac. Power. Well done, Eleanor said quietly. Your father would have been proud. I deserve better than this, Carrie said. The words came out strong, certain, a statement, not a question. I deserved honesty. I deserved respect. Even if he didn't love me, I deserved the truth. Yes, Eleanor said, you did. And now you have it. Graham cleared his throat. There's one more thing you should know. Carrie turned to look at him, braced herself for another blow. What? The SCK has opened an informal inquiry into Brennan Technologies. There are irregularities in their financial statements, discrepancies between reported revenue and actual income. What does that mean? It means Derek may have been cooking the books, inflating his company's value to attract investors. Graham's voice was careful, measured. If the investigation finds what I suspect it will find, he's looking at federal charges. Securities fraud, possibly embezzlement. Prison? Very possibly. The baby kicked, hard, right under Carrie's ribs. She placed her hand on her belly, felt the movement, the life, the future. He wanted to use our daughter to steal money, she said slowly, but he made one critical miscalculation. What's that? The trust isn't in my name. The principal goes directly to the children when they turn 25. Even with custody, he would never have touched a penny. Graham nodded. Your father was a brilliant man. He structured the trust specifically to protect against exactly this kind of manipulation. So Derek's entire plan was doomed from the start. From the very beginning, he was chasing money he was never going to get. Carrie laughed. The sound surprised her. It wasn't bitter this time. It was almost genuine. He thought he was so clever. He thought he had everything figured out. He was wrong, Eleanor said. About everything, most of all, about you. 3 days passed. Derek remained trapped in Halifax. No commercial flights would book him. Every rental car company was mysteriously unavailable. Every hotel that could accommodate him was suddenly full. Eleanor Ashford's reach was longer than anyone outside her inner circle knew. Decades of business relationships. Favors accumulated like compound interest. A network of contacts that spanned airlines, hotels, car services, and everything in between. When Eleanor wanted someone inconvenienced, they stayed inconvenienced. In Boston, Carrie tried to find something resembling normalcy. She slept in her childhood bed, ate meals that Helen prepared with motherly care, walked in the garden where her father's roses still bloomed despite the August heat. But normal felt like a foreign concept, something from another life, another version of herself that no longer existed. Every hour brought new revelations, new evidence of Derek's betrayal, new depths to the deception she had lived inside for 5 years. Margot arrived on day 4 with another folder of documents. I did some digging, she said. Her lawyer face was on, the one she wore in court when she was about to demolish an opposing witness. Through legal channels, mostly. Mostly. I have friends in places. They have access to things. The less you know about the specifics, the better. Margot spread papers across the coffee table. Here's what I found. The documents told a story of a man whose carefully constructed life was coming apart at the seams. Brennan Technologies was in serious trouble, had been for over a year, revenue down 32% year over year. 3 major clients had terminated their contracts. The company's primary product, a cloud-based security platform, had been leapfrogged by competitors with better technology and deeper pockets. Derek's business partner, Marcus Webb, had been pushing for radical changes, a pivot to a new market, cost-cutting measures, possibly selling the company before it became worthless. Derek had refused, too arrogant to admit failure, too proud to accept help, too convinced that his next scheme would save everything. He needed money, Margot explained, badly, desperately. The affair with Sloan wasn't just about sex or romance or whatever he told himself. She has connections in the venture capital world. Family money. He was using her to find investors. And using me. And using you. Margot's voice was gentle but honest. You were the bigger prize, though. He thought marrying into the Ashford family would solve all his problems. When that didn't work out the way he planned, he pivoted to the baby angle. Carrie picked up one of the documents. An internal memo from Brennan Technologies dated 3 months ago. What's this? That's where it gets interesting. Margot leaned forward, her eyes bright with the thrill of uncovering someone's dirty secrets. Marcus Webb called an emergency board meeting yesterday. The news of Derek's, shall we say, marital difficulties has spread through certain business circles. And Ashford Continental pulled their catering contract with one of Derek's client hotels. Domino effect. 3 other hotels canceled their corporate accounts within 48 hours. 2 airline partnerships that were in negotiation fell through. Margot paused for effect. In total, Brennan Technologies has lost approximately $4.7 million in business since your husband left you on that tarmac. Carrie stared at the numbers. $4.7 million in 3 days. My mother's doing? Not directly. Eleanor didn't make any calls about this specifically. She didn't have to. Margot's smile was thin, satisfied. Word travels fast in certain circles. When Eleanor Ashford's pregnant daughter gets abandoned by her husband, people pay attention. They draw their own conclusions. They make their own decisions about who they want to do business with. The baby kicked. Carrie shifted position on the couch. Her back ached constantly now. The price of carrying another human being in her body. The price of everything. What happens to the company? Unclear. Marcus is trying to save it. He's distancing himself from Derek as fast as he can. The board is meeting again tomorrow to discuss removing Derek as CEO. Can they do that? Remove him from his own company? If he's violated his fiduciary duties, absolutely. And from what I'm seeing in these documents, he's violated quite a few. Margot shuffled through more papers. There are irregularities in the financial statements. Money moving to accounts that don't appear on the official books. Revenue recognition that doesn't match actual cash flow. You think he was stealing from his own company? I think he was doing whatever he thought he could get away with. The man has no boundaries, no lines he won't cross. Carrie should have felt satisfaction, vindication, some kind of righteous pleasure at watching her husband's world collapse. But all she felt was exhausted. He did this to himself, she said quietly. Every choice, every laying, every manipulation. It's all coming back to him now. That's how karma works. Margot's voice was gentle. You don't have to feel sorry for him. I don't, Carrie paused. I feel sorry for me, for the years I wasted believing in something that was never real, for the person I thought I married. That's normal. That's grief. Is it? Margot reached out, took her hand. When I divorced Michael, I grieved for 2 years. Not for him. For the future I thought we were going to have. For the life I'd planned. For the person I thought he was. She squeezed Carrie's fingers. You're not grieving Derek. You're grieving a fantasy. And that's completely okay. The tears came without warning. Carrie let them fall. Didn't try to stop them. Didn't try to be strong. Margot held her, just like she had in college, just like she had 100 times before. The steadfast friend who never judged, never criticized, just showed up again and again. Meanwhile, across the city, Sloane Whitfield was having the worst day of her life. Her mother had arrived unannounced that morning. Barbara Whitfield, 63 years old, retired hospital administrator, a woman who had spent 40 years managing crises and solving problems and refusing to accept excuses. You stupid, stupid girl. Barbara's voice echoed through Sloane's expensive downtown apartment. Do you have any idea what you've done? Mother, please, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. Barbara paced the living room like a caged tiger. You threw away your career, your reputation, your future for a man who was using you just like he was using his wife. Derek loves me. We're going to be together. Derek loves money. That's all he's ever loved. That's all he's capable of loving. Barbara stopped pacing, stared at her daughter with something like disgust. Do you have any idea who Eleanor Ashford is? Sloane bit her lip. She runs some airline company. Derek said his wife's family had a little money, but... A little money, Barbara laughed. It was not a kind sound. Eleanor Ashford is worth $4.2 billion. She employs 46,000 people. She donated the new cardiac wing at my hospital. She funded half the research programs at Boston Children's. The color drained from Sloane's face. Derek said, Derek lied. That's what he does. That's who he is. Barbara pulled out her phone, opened a news article, shoved it in her daughter's face. Read this. The headline, Tech CEO abandons pregnant wife on airport tarmac for younger woman. Sloane's photograph wasn't included. Not yet, but her name was mentioned in the second paragraph. Sources close to the couple had identified her as the other woman. Your career is over, Barbara said flatly. No respectable company will touch you. You've been publicly identified as the mistress of a married man. A married man whose pregnant wife happens to be the daughter of one of the most powerful women in American business. But I didn't know, so you didn't want to know. There's a difference. Barbara shook her head. 3 years, Sloane. You've been sleeping with this man for 3 years. You never once thought to question his story about his wife? Never once thought to do a simple internet search? Sloane had no answer, because the truth was worse than her mother imagined. She had known. Not everything, not the full extent of Derek's schemes, but she had known enough. She had known he was married. She had known he was using his wife for something. She just hadn't cared, because Derek had promised her the world, a future together, a life filled with everything she had ever wanted. And now all of it was turning to ash. What do I do? She whispered. Barbara shook her head. I don't know, but you'd better figure it out fast, because the fallout from this is just beginning. Back at the Ashford estate, evening had fallen. Carrie sat in her mother's study. The fire crackled in the fireplace despite the summer heat. The grandfather clock ticked in its corner. Outside, rain streaked the windows, the first storm of the season rolling in from the coast. Helen Mercer appeared in the doorway. Her face was carefully neutral, but there was something in her eyes, something that looked like anticipation. Mrs. Brennan, there's something I need to show you, something I probably shouldn't be sharing, but I think you need to see it. Carrie looked up from the book she wasn't really reading. What is it? Helen crossed the room, handed her a folder. Thinner than the others, more personal. I did some checking on my own, Helen said. Her voice was low, confidential. Discreetly, through channels that don't lead back to your mother or the company. What kind of checking? The kind that reveals secrets people think are well hidden. Carrie opened the folder. Inside, photographs. Derek and Sloane at a restaurant. 6 months ago, his hand on her thigh, her head on his shoulder. More photographs. Derek and Sloane at a hotel 3 months ago, coming out of a room together, his arm around her waist. More. Derek and Sloane looking at apartments. 2 weeks ago, the real estate agent shaking their hands. Big smiles all around. They were apartment hunting. 2 weeks before he left her on the tarmac. Your mother had him followed, Helen explained, but I supplemented her investigators' work with some inquiries of my own. The apartment they were looking at, it's a 3-bedroom in Back Bay. They made an offer. It was accepted yesterday. They bought an apartment together. Put a deposit down at least, using money from the Cayman Islands account. Helen paused. The account funded by money he stole from you. Carrie flipped through the photographs. Her husband with another woman. Smiling, planning, building a future that didn't include her. She had been carrying his child while he shopped for an apartment with his mistress, had been choosing baby names while he signed real estate documents, had been dreaming about their future while he was already living in a different one. There's something else, Helen said. Something your mother doesn't know yet. Carrie looked up. What? Sloane Whitfield wasn't the only one. Helen's voice dropped even lower. There's another woman, a junior accountant at Derek's company. Her name is Brittany Sawyer, 24 years old. They've been involved for approximately 8 months. Carrie felt nothing. The numbness had returned, a protective shell wrapped around her heart. He was cheating on his mistress. Yes, ma'am, with a woman 10 years younger than her. Of course he was. A man like Derek would never be satisfied with one woman, or 2, or 10. His ego required constant feeding, constant validation, constant proof of his own irresistibility. Does Sloane know? I don't believe so, not yet. Carrie closed the folder, set it aside. Thank you, Helen, this is helpful. What are you going to do with the information? Carrie thought about it, the photographs, the apartment, the other mistress. I'm not sure yet, but I think Sloan and I might need to have a conversation. Helen nodded, a hint of approval in her eyes. Derek thought he was the puppet master, Carrie said slowly. He thought he was controlling everyone, manipulating everyone, playing us all against each other. And, and he had no idea that he's been dancing on someone else's strings the entire time. The document sat on Eleanor's dining room table, a single sheet of paper that changed everything. An email from Derek to Sloan, sent 4 months ago, retrieved from a server backup by Eleanor's investigator. Once the baby is born, I'll file for divorce. She'll be too exhausted to fight, too overwhelmed with the newborn to think clearly. I'll negotiate shared custody, which will give me access to the Ashford family trust. The kid is worth more than the marriage ever was. 3 years of planning, 3 years of patience, finally paying off. Just need to keep playing the role a little longer. 6 more weeks. Then we're free. Carrie read it once, read it twice, read it 3 times. Each reading hurt more than the last. He didn't want her. He never had. He didn't want the baby, not as a child, not as a person, just as a key to unlock her family's money. He was planning to divorce her, had been planning it for months, while she was decorating the nursery, while she was attending childbirth classes, while she was dreaming about their future as a family. All of it was a lie. She walked to the bathroom, made it just in time, threw up everything she had eaten, kept retching even when there was nothing left. The baby kicked, insistent, demanding. I'm okay, Carrie whispered to her belly. We're okay. We're going to be okay. But she wasn't sure she believed it. That night, she sat alone in her childhood bedroom. 2 in the morning, the house was silent. Her mother was asleep. Helen had gone home. Carrie couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the email. The words burned into her brain. The kid is worth more than the marriage ever was. She picked up her phone, scrolled to Derek's number. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. What would she say? What was there to say? She typed, "Was any of it real? Did you ever feel anything for me at all?" Deleted it, typed, "I hope you suffer. I hope you lose everything. I hope you rot." Deleted it, typed, "The baby is a girl. You'll never know her. You gave up that right the day you walked up those stairs." Deleted it. The baby kicked. Hard. Carrie put down the phone. She couldn't do this. Couldn't keep circling the same drain. Couldn't keep letting him occupy space in her mind when he had already taken so much. I can't do this. I can't raise a child alone. I can't face everyone who warned me about him. I can't admit I was so stupid. I can't start over at 32. I can't. The thoughts spiraled, dark and heavy and suffocating. She walked to the window, looked out at her mother's garden. The roses were silver in the moonlight. The first hints of autumn touched the leaves. The world continued to turn, indifferent to her pain. Her father planted those roses. 25 years ago, the year Carrie was born, one bush for each member of the family. Red for Eleanor, white for Robert, pink for Carrie, yellow for Teddy when he came along 2 years later. Robert Ashford had been a man who believed in legacy, in planting things that would outlast him, in building foundations that future generations could stand on. He had been dead for 20 years now. Car accident. A drunk driver ran a red light. Robert never saw it coming, never had a chance to say goodbye. Eleanor had been devastated. For months, she barely functioned, barely ate, barely spoke, barely acknowledged the world outside her grief. But she had 2 children, a company that employed thousands of people, a legacy her husband had started and expected her to continue. So Eleanor Ashford got up every morning, put on her armor, went to work, came home, raised her children, built her empire, not because she wanted to, not because it was easy, but because the alternative was giving up. And Eleanor Ashford didn't give up. If she could survive that, I can survive this. The thought crystallized in Carrie's mind, clear and bright and undeniable. She had lost her husband, but her mother had lost the love of her life, and she had survived. More than survived, she had thrived. Carrie had lost 5 years to a con man, but Eleanor had lost a partner, a soulmate, a future they had planned together for decades. If her mother could rebuild from that rubble, Carrie could rebuild from this. She walked downstairs, through the silent house, out the back door, into the garden. The night air was cool, the first breath of autumn whispering through the leaves, stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on velvet. She walked to her father's rose garden, sat down on the stone bench he had installed when she was a child, the bench where she used to sit and read while he pruned the bushes, where they talked about everything and nothing. "I miss you, Daddy," she whispered into the darkness. "I wish you were here. I wish you could tell me what to do." The roses didn't answer. They never did. But sitting there, surrounded by her father's memory, she felt something shift. The hardest part isn't that he betrayed me. The hardest part is admitting that I chose him. I believed him. I let this happen. She had to own that, had to accept her own role in the disaster, had to forgive herself for the blindness and the hope and the desperate wanting to be loved for herself. And then she had to move forward. 3 in the morning, Carrie pulled out her phone. She Googled how to explain divorce to a baby, closed the browser, opened it again, closed it, opened it. There would be time for those conversations, years from now, when her daughter was old enough to understand, when the rawness of this moment had faded into something manageable. Right now, she just had to survive, 1 hour at a time, 1 day at a time. She stayed in the garden until the sky began to lighten, until the first bird started singing, until the world woke up to a new day. Then she went inside, showered, dressed, put on makeup for the first time in a week. When Eleanor came downstairs for breakfast, she found her daughter at the dining room table, documents spread out before her, coffee in hand, ready to fight. "I've made a decision," Carrie said. Eleanor sat down across from her. "Tell me. I don't want revenge. I don't want to destroy him. I just want what's fair." Carrie met her mother's eyes. "I want full custody of my daughter. I want our divorce to be clean and final. I want to never have to think about Derek Brennan again." "What about everything he did, the money he stole, the lies he told?" "The legal system can deal with that. The SEO investigation, the fraud charges." Carrie shook her head. "But I'm not going to spend my life trying to punish him. I'm not going to let anger and hatred consume me. I have more important things to focus on." Eleanor studied her daughter for a long moment. Then she smiled, a real smile, proud and warm and full of love. "You sound like your father." "I hope so. He would be so proud of you, Caroline, the woman you're becoming." "I hope that too." They sat together in the morning light, mother and daughter, survivors. Rebuilding, 2 weeks after the Tarmac. Carrie sat across from her mother in Eleanor's office on the 43rd floor of Ashford Continental headquarters. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the Boston skyline. The harbor sparkled in the autumn sunshine. Planes took off and landed in the distance, tiny silver birds carrying people to their futures. "I want to ask you something, Sarita," Carrie said, "and I want an honest answer." Eleanor nodded. "I've always been honest with you, Carolyn, even when it was difficult." "Did you ever like him, Derek, from the beginning? Did you ever see anything good in him?" Eleanor was silent for a long moment. The clock on her desk ticked softly. Traffic moved far below, silent through the soundproofed glass. Then, "No, I never liked him. Not from the first moment you introduced us." "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because you're my daughter, not my employee." Eleanor's voice was gentle, the voice of a mother, not a CEO. "I don't get to choose who you love. I don't get to approve or disapprove of your relationships." "I learned that lesson painfully a long time ago." "What do you mean?" "My parents hated your father." Eleanor smiled at the memory, bittersweet, full of old love and old grief. "Thought he was beneath me, beneath the family. They threatened to disown me if I married him." "I never knew that." "It was a different time, different expectations. I was supposed to marry someone from our social circle, someone approved by the board of directors, someone who would merge our family's interests with another powerful family." "But you married Dad instead." "I did. Best decision I ever made." Eleanor's eyes glistened. "We had 32 years together before I lost him. 32 years of partnership and love and building something real. No amount of family money could have given me that." "You thought Derek was different." I hoped Derek was different. I hoped I was wrong about him. Oh, Eleanor shook her head, but I saw the hunger in his eyes, the calculation behind his charm. I recognized it because I've seen it 1,000 times in boardrooms and negotiations. The look of someone who wants something and will do anything to get it. Why didn't you warn me? Would you have listened? The question hung in the air. Carrie wanted to say yes, wanted to believe she would have heard her mother's concerns and taken them seriously. But she knew the truth. No, she admitted, I wouldn't have. I would have thought you were being overprotective, controlling, trying to run my life like you run your company. Exactly. Eleanor reached across the desk, took her daughter's hands. So I stayed silent. I watched. I waited. I hoped I was wrong. And when I realized I wasn't wrong, I started gathering evidence, preparing for the day when you would need it. You were protecting me. I was trying to, in the only way I knew how. Carrie squeezed her mother's hands, felt the strength in them, the same hands that had built an empire, the same hands that had held her when she cried, the same hands that had kept the family together after her father died. I love you, Mom. I love you too, sweetheart. More than you know. The intercom buzzed. Eleanor's assistant's voice. Mrs. Ashford, Graham Hollister is here for the meeting. Eleanor released her daughter's hands, straightened in her chair. The CEO mask settled back into place. Send him in. Graham entered with his usual folder of documents, but his expression was different today. Lighter, almost pleased. Good news, he said. The divorce is proceeding exactly as we hoped. Derek has no grounds to contest anything. His lawyers of his fathers have advised him to cooperate fully. And the custody arrangement? Carrie asked. Full custody to you, given the documentation we have. There was no fight to be made. Carrie felt something release in her chest. Full custody. Her daughter would be hers. Only hers. What about visitation? Graham hesitated, glanced at Eleanor, back at Carrie. That's where it gets interesting. Derek has requested supervised visitation rights through his lawyer. Requested by him specifically? Yes, he claims he wants to be part of the child's life, wants to have a relationship with his daughter. Carrie thought about the email. The kid is worth more than the marriage ever was. No, she said finally. Her voice was steady, certain. No visitation until she's old enough to choose for herself, and not until he completes a comprehensive psychological evaluation. Graham raised an eyebrow. That's a significant demand. He was planning to use our daughter to steal from my family. He called her the kid in an email to his mistress. He reduced her to a line item in a financial scheme. Carrie's voice hardened. He doesn't get to be a father when it's convenient. He doesn't get to drift in and out of her life based on what he thinks he can get from us. Eleanor smiled. You're more like me than you think. Is that a good thing? The best thing. Graham made notes. I'll communicate your terms. Given the circumstances and the evidence we possess, I don't expect significant resistance. After he left, Carrie sat with her mother in comfortable silence. The afternoon sun painted the office in golden light. The city sprawled beneath them, millions of lives intersecting and diverging. What happens now? Carrie asked. Whatever you want to happen. Eleanor stood, walked to the window. You can stay at the estate as long as you need, forever if you want. It's your home. It always has been. And after the baby comes? Then we figure it out together, day by day, challenge by challenge. Eleanor turned. Her eyes were bright with emotion. I've waited a long time to be a grandmother, Carolyn. I intend to enjoy every single moment. For the first time since the Tarmac, Carrie felt genuine hope. I don't know who I'm becoming, she said, but I know I'm stronger than he ever gave me credit for. You always were, sweetheart. You just forgot for a little while. That evening, Margot arrived with dinner, Chinese food from their favorite place near Harvard, the same restaurant where they had celebrated Carrie's law school acceptance. The same restaurant where Margot had cried after her own divorce was finalized. They sat on Carrie's bed in her childhood room, cross-legged, eating from containers, like they were 22 again, and the world was full of possibilities. I have something to tell you, Margot said between bites of lo mein. More bad news? Different news. Interesting news. Margot set down her chopsticks. Sloan Whitfield called me today. Carrie's hand froze halfway to her mouth. Derek Sloan? But the Mistress Sloan? The very same. Why would she call you? Margot's expression was complicated. Sympathy and amusement in something else. Something that looked almost like satisfaction. Because she just found out that Derek was cheating on her too, with a junior accountant at his company, for the past 8 months. Carrie stared. Then she laughed. It started as a giggle. Then it grew. Then she was laughing so hard tears streamed down her face. He was cheating on his mistress, she gasped, while he was cheating on his wife, with a third woman. Her name is Brittany. She's 24, apparently very enthusiastic. That made Carrie laugh harder. When she finally caught her breath, she looked at her friend. What does Sloan want? To talk to you, face to face. Margot's voice was careful. She says she has information, documents, evidence, the kind that could change everything. Carrie thought about it. The woman who had smiled at her from the plane stairs. The woman who had been complicit in destroying her marriage. The woman who was now experiencing her own version of betrayal. Set up a meeting, she said. I want to hear what she has to say. Margot raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? After everything she did? Especially after everything she did. Carrie picked up her chopsticks, resumed eating. She was a pawn, just like me. Derek used us both. Maybe it's time we compared notes. That's very evolved of you. I'm 9 months pregnant and recently abandoned. Evolution is my only option. Margot smiled. There's the Carrie I know and love. They finished dinner, watched a terrible reality TV show, laughed at the contestants' terrible decisions, and for the first time since the Tarmac, Carrie felt almost normal. The coffee shop was in Cambridge, a quiet corner establishment far from both the Ashford estate and the wreckage of Derek's life. Neutral territory. Carrie arrived 10 minutes early, ordered decaf, sat in a corner booth where she could see the door, where she could watch everyone who entered. Her hands were steady around the ceramic cup. Her heart beat at its normal pace. She had expected to feel nervous, angry, something. Instead, she felt curious. What did Sloan Whitfield want? What could she possibly offer? What was left to say between the wife and the mistress of a man who had betrayed them both? The door opened at exactly 10 o'clock. Sloan walked in. She looked different from the woman on the tarmac. The confident stride was gone. The perfect makeup was smudged. The designer clothes hung loosely on a frame that had lost weight rapidly. Dark circles under her eyes, pallor in her cheeks, the haunted look of someone whose world had collapsed. Sloan spotted Carrie, hesitated. For a moment, it seemed like she might turn around and leave. Then she squared her shoulders and walked over. Thank you for meeting me, she said. Her voice was hoarse, rough, like she'd been crying for days. I know I don't deserve it. I know you have every reason to hate me. Sit down. Sloan sat, didn't order anything, just folded her hands on the table and waited. Why am I here? Carrie asked. What do you want? I want to apologize, and I want to give you something. Sloan took a breath, steadied herself. I'm not the person you think I am, not completely. I made terrible choices, unforgivable choices, but I didn't know everything. I didn't understand what Derek really was. What do you think he is? A con man? A manipulator? A pathological liar? Sloan's voice cracked. He told me you were cold, distant, that you had trapped him with the pregnancy, that you were miserable together and he was just waiting for the right moment to leave. And you believed him. I believed everything he said about you, about our future, about the life we were going to have together. Tears spilled down Sloan's cheeks. I was so stupid. God help me, I was so completely stupid. Carrie watched her cry. The woman who had destroyed her marriage, the woman who had smiled from the plane stairs, now reduced to tears in a coffee shop, another victim of Derek's manipulation. You knew he was married, Carrie said. Her voice was neutral, not accusing, just stating facts. Yes, from the beginning. You didn't care. I cared. I believed him when he said the marriage was over in all but name. I believed him when he said he was staying for the right reasons. Sloan wiped her eyes. I was young and ambitious, and he was everything I thought I wanted. Smart, successful, charming. He made me feel special, important, like I was the only woman in the world. He was good at that. He was good at a lot of things, lying most of all. Sloane reached into her bag, pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. What's this? Financial records. Derek's real books, not the ones he showed investors or the board. Carrie opened the folder. Pages of spreadsheets, account statements, numbers that told a damning story. He's been embezzling from his own company, Sloane explained. $3.8 million over the past 2 years. Skimming from client accounts, inflating expenses, creating fake vendors, and paying invoices to himself. Carrie looked up. How do you know this? Because I helped him do it. Sloane's voice was barely a whisper. At first, I didn't know what I was doing. He told me it was creative accounting, tax optimization, legal ways to protect his assets. By the time I realized what was really happening, I was in too deep. You're complicit in fraud. Yes, and I'm going to face consequences for that. Sloane met Carrie's eyes. I have a lawyer now, my own lawyer, not one of Derek's people. She's advised me to cooperate fully with the SEC investigation, to provide everything I know in exchange for a reduced sentence. You're turning on him. I'm telling the truth. Finally, Sloane pushed the folder closer. These documents prove everything. The embezzlement, the fraud, the lies he told investors. If the authorities get this, Derek is looking at federal prison time. Carrie looked at the documents again, page after page of evidence, enough to destroy Derek completely. Why are you giving this to me? Because I watched him leave you on that tarmac. I watched you standing there in your white dress, 8 months pregnant, watching us fly away. Sloane's voice broke. And I smiled at you. I actually smiled, like I had won something, like I was special and you were nothing. I remember. I've never been more ashamed of anything in my life. The tears were flowing freely now. I thought I was the winner. I thought I was the one he really loved. And then I found out about Brittany. Found out he was cheating on me the whole time. That I was just another mark. Another pawn in his game. Welcome to the club. It came out harsher than Carrie intended, but Sloane didn't flinch. I deserve that. I deserve worse. She wiped her face with a napkin, tried to compose herself. I can't undo what I did. I can't give you back the years you wasted or the trust that was broken. But I can help you make sure he pays for what he did. To both of us. Carrie sat back, considered her options. This woman had been her enemy, her rival, the face of her betrayal. But looking at her now, broken and repentant and offering weapons for the war, Carrie saw something different. Another casualty, another life destroyed by Derek's greed. I'll take the documents, Carrie said finally. But not because I forgive you. I'm not there yet. I don't know if I ever will be. I understand. I'm taking them because it's the right thing to do, because people who steal should face consequences, because my daughter deserves to know that her father was held accountable. Sloane absorbed this. Your daughter? Yes. I found out last month Derek doesn't know. He never will. You're having a girl. I'm having a girl, and she will never know Derek Brennan. Not if I have anything to say about it. They sat in silence for a moment. Two women connected by the same man's lies. Two lives derailed by the same selfish manipulation. I hope you find happiness, Sloane said finally. You and your daughter. I hope you have a beautiful life. What about you? Sloane shrugged. I'll survive, cooperate with the investigation, face whatever charges come, try to rebuild something from the wreckage. She stood, gathered her bag. I'm moving back to Vermont, my parents' place. I can't stay in Boston. Too many memories, too much shame. That's probably wise. For what it's worth, I really am sorry. Not just for what I did to your marriage, for what I did to myself, for the person I became. Sloane walked to the door, paused, looked back. Derek was right about one thing, you know. What's that? You are remarkable, the way you've handled all of this, the dignity you've shown. Sloane smiled, sad and genuine and broken. He never deserved you. None of us did. She left. Carrie sat alone with the folder. The evidence. The weapon? She could take this to the authorities herself, make sure Derek paid for every crime, watch him be led away in handcuffs. But that would make her the villain in his story, the vengeful ex-wife, the bitter woman who couldn't let go. She didn't want to be that person. Back at the estate, she gathered her team in the dining room. Eleanor, Graham, Teddy, Margot. If these documents are authentic, Graham said after reviewing them, Derek faces serious federal charges, securities fraud, embezzlement, potentially wire fraud. We're talking about 15 to 20 years in prison. Teddy leaned forward. So we bury him. Finally. Carrie shook her head. No, we don't. Everyone looked at her. We give the documents to Marcus, Derek's business partner. Let him decide what to do. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. That's unexpectedly merciful. It's not mercy, it's strategy. Carrie met her mother's eyes. If we destroy Derek, I'm the bitter ex-wife, the scorned woman who used her family's power for revenge. That story follows me forever. It follows my daughter forever. And if Marcus turns him in, then Derek is destroyed by his own partner, his own colleague, his own choices coming back to haunt him. Carrie smiled. It was not a kind smile. I'm the victim who took the high road, who focused on her child instead of her anger, who let justice take its course without lifting a finger. Eleanor's expression transformed. Pride, respect, recognition. You're more like me than I ever realized. I learned from the best. Graham nodded slowly. It's a smart approach. Distance yourself from the destruction while ensuring it happens. I just want it over, Carrie said. I want to move on with my life. I want to focus on my daughter. I want Derek Brennan to be a footnote in my history, not the defining chapter. That night, Carrie wrote Derek a letter. She didn't send it, just wrote it, getting the words out of her head and onto paper. I loved you. That wasn't fake. Whatever you believed about me, whatever lies you told yourself to justify what you did, my love was real. But you never saw me, never tried to see me. You saw what you wanted to see, a path to something bigger, a means to an end. I hope someday you understand what you lost. Not the money, not the connections, not the empire you thought you were going to access. Me and her. You will never know your daughter. That's the consequence of your choices. You traded a family for a scheme, and the scheme failed. I'm not the same person I was 2 months ago. I don't know who I'm becoming. But I know this. I'm stronger than you thought. I always was. You just never bothered to see it. Goodbye, Derek. I hope prison gives you time to reflect on how spectacularly you failed. She folded the letter, put it in a drawer. She didn't need him to read it. She needed to write it. And now it was done. 3 weeks later, Carrie was 9 months pregnant. 38 weeks. Ready, waiting, enormous. Every day felt like the last day of something and the first day of something else. Her body was a countdown clock. Her daughter was a presence demanding to be born. The phone rang at 8 in the morning. Graham Hollister. It happened, Graham said. Marcus filed a formal report with the SEC yesterday. Derek was arrested this morning. Carrie was in her mother's garden. The roses were fading. The first leaves were beginning to turn. Autumn was here. How? Federal agents showed up at his hotel in Halifax. He'd finally managed to get a room after 2 weeks of mysterious unavailability. They walked him out in handcuffs. What are the charges? Securities fraud, embezzlement, wire fraud, tax evasion. Graham paused. He's looking at 15 to 20 years, possibly more. Carrie sat down on her father's bench. The stone was cool beneath her. What happens now? He'll be extradited to Massachusetts. Arraignment within 72 hours. Given the evidence and the multiple charges, bail is unlikely. And the custody arrangement? Finalized this morning, full custody to you. Another pause. He waived visitation rights as part of a plea negotiation, traded his parental rights for a reduced sentence. Carrie processed this. Her husband, the father of her child, had traded his daughter for a shorter prison term. She should feel something. Surprise, hurt, vindication. Instead, she felt only tired. He chose himself, she said, like he always does. That seems to be his pattern, yes. How much time did it save him, giving up his daughter? Approximately 3 years off the minimum sentence. 3 years, that was the value of his child. 3 years of slightly more comfort in a federal prison. Thank you, Graham, for everything. It's what I'm here for. His voice softened. Your father would be proud of you, Caroline. The way you've handled this, the grace you've shown under impossible circumstances. I hope so. I know so. The baby kicked. Hard, insistent, ready. Soon, sweetheart. Soon. The divorce was finalized 2 days later, via video conference. Carrie sat in Graham's office with her mother beside her, Margot behind her. The screen on the wall showed a courtroom in Massachusetts. Derek appeared on camera. Orange jumpsuit, gaunt face, 3 weeks in custody had aged him a decade. Carrie barely recognized him. The confident man she had married was gone, replaced by someone diminished, defeated, destroyed. The judge read the terms. Division of assets, which was really no division at all. Everything went to Carrie. The house, the cars, the investments. Everything accumulated during the marriage. Derek had nothing left to contest. Do either party wish to make a statement before the divorce is finalized? The judge asked. Derek's lawyer shook his head. My client has nothing to add. Carrie raised her hand. I do. The courtroom went quiet. Eleanor squeezed her daughter's hand. Derek. Carrie looked at the screen, at the stranger in the orange jumpsuit, at the man she had promised to love and honor and cherish. You said you never meant for it to go this far. Derek flinched, his own words thrown back at him. I believed you once, Carrie continued. Believed everything you said, every promise, every declaration of love, every plan for our future. Carrie, I'm not finished. Her voice was steel wrapped in silk. You left me on a tarmac, 8 months pregnant, in front of witnesses. You flew off with your mistress while I stood there trying to understand what was happening. I made a mistake. You made a choice. Every day for 3 years you made choices. To lie, to manipulate, to steal, to treat me and our daughter as assets to be exploited. Carrie's voice cracked slightly, just slightly. You wrote in an email that the kid is worth more than the marriage ever was. That's what you thought of our daughter, a commodity, a means to an end. Derek said nothing. There was nothing to say. Our daughter will never know you. That's your choice. You chose a reduced sentence over your own child. You traded 3 years of prison time for the right to be her father. Carrie took a breath. I hope it was worth it. The judge signed the papers. It was done. Carrie walked out of Graham's office into the October sunshine, her mother on one side, Margot on the other. How do you feel? Margot asked. Carrie took a deep breath, felt the autumn air fill her lungs, felt the weight of the past few months begin to lift. Free, she said. I feel free. That night at 11:15, her water broke. Eleanor drove her to the hospital, breaking several traffic laws in the process. Margot met them in the emergency room. Teddy paced the waiting room like a caged animal. The labor was long. 14 hours of contractions and breathing exercise and pushing and pain. But Carrie didn't mind. Every contraction brought her closer to meeting her daughter. Every wave of pain erased another piece of Derek's shadow. Every moment was a step forward into a new life. At 3:47 in the morning, Amelia Rose Ashford was born. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, pink and perfect and screaming at the top of her lungs. The nurse placed her on Carrie's chest, tiny fingers curling, tiny toes kicking, eyes that blinked up at her mother with something like recognition. Hello, sweetheart, Carrie whispered through her tears. I've been waiting for you. I've been waiting for you my whole life. Amelia stopped crying, looked up at her mother, like she understood. Like she knew exactly who Carrie was and why they were here and what their future held. Eleanor appeared beside the bed, tears streaming down her face. The CEO, the billionaire, the most powerful woman in American aviation, reduced to a weeping grandmother. She's beautiful, Eleanor choked out. She looks just like you did. When you were born, same expression, same stubborn chin. She has your chin too. God help her. Eleanor laughed through her tears. The Ashford stubbornness passes down through generations. Margot crowded in. Teddy appeared in the doorway. Everyone crying, everyone smiling, everyone focused on this tiny new life. Carrie held her daughter close, felt the tiny heartbeat against her own. This was what mattered. This was what lasted. This was what Derek had traded for 3 years off his prison sentence. His loss. Forever. "I'm going to tell you a story someday," she whispered to Amelia, "about a woman who thought she lost everything and found out she had everything she needed all along." Amelia yawned, closed her eyes, fell asleep in her mother's arms. Safe. Loved. Home. 6 months later, Carrie stood in the lobby of Ashford Continental headquarters. Marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers. The company logo dominated the wall behind the reception desk. Employees hustled past with coffee cups and laptops and purposeful expressions. Amelia slept in a carrier against Carrie's chest, 6 months old now, growing so fast it seemed impossible. Every day a new discovery, every moment precious. Eleanor walked beside her, silver hair perfectly styled, power suit impeccable, the CEO returning to her domain. "Are you ready for this?" Eleanor asked. "I've been ready my whole life. I just didn't know it." They entered the elevator, rode to the 43rd floor, the executive level, the place where decisions were made and fortunes were built and the future of 46,000 employees was shaped. The boardroom doors opened. 12 executives stood, men and women who had spent their careers at Ashford Continental, who remembered Carrie as a little girl running through these halls, who had watched her grow up and go to college and make her own way in the world. Now they watched her return. Eleanor took her place at the head of the table, the throne she had occupied for 30 years, the seat Robert Ashford had sat in before her. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, "I'd like to introduce our new director of corporate philanthropy, my daughter, Caroline Ashford." Applause filled the room, genuine, enthusiastic, welcoming. Carrie looked around at the faces, these people who were her family's legacy, her father's colleagues, her mother's team. She dropped the Brennan from her name. It felt right, like shedding a skin that never fit properly. "Thank you," she said. "I'm honored to be here, to be part of what my parents built, to carry forward the values they taught me." The meeting lasted 2 hours. Strategy discussions, budget reviews, philanthropic initiatives. Carrie presented her vision for the new foundation, programs for single mothers, job training partnerships, support services for families in crisis, everything she wished she'd had during the darkest days of her divorce. The board approved everything, unanimously. "The Robert Ashford Foundation," Carrie said, presenting the final document, "named for my father, funded by the profits of the company he helped build, dedicated to helping people rebuild their lives when everything falls apart." She didn't mention Derek, didn't mention the inspiration for the programs. Some things didn't need to be said. The first scholarship was awarded 3 months later. Full tuition to a young woman whose mother was raising 3 children alone after an abusive marriage. Books, housing, living expenses, everything she needed to succeed. The first job training program graduated its inaugural class 6 months after that. 15 single mothers, all employed within 60 days, all building new lives. A reporter from the Boston Globe requested an interview. Carrie agreed, one condition, no questions about her divorce. The article ran on a Sunday, front page of the business section. Ashford heiress steps into family business with bold philanthropic vision. The story focused on her work, the foundation, the scholarships, the programs. One paragraph mentioned her personal challenges without details. Carrie didn't read that paragraph. The months blended together, board meetings, foundation events, Amelia's first smile, her first laugh, her first tooth, her first word. Mama. Then unexpectedly, Gam. Her version of grandma. Eleanor cried for an hour. Life settled into a rhythm, demanding but fulfilling, exhausting but rewarding. Carrie bought a house, smaller than the one she'd shared with Derek, closer to her mother, in a neighborhood full of young families and good schools. Hers, completely hers. She painted the nursery herself. Pale yellow walls, white trim, a mural of clouds on the ceiling. A mobile of airplanes above the crib. Amelia's first steps came at 11 months, in her grandmother's garden, among the roses her great-grandfather had planted. She fell down, got up, fell down, got up, over and over until she made it across the lawn into Carrie's arms, just like her mother, stubborn, determined, unbreakable. 1 year after the tarmac, Carrie sat on the porch of her house. October again, the leaves turning gold and red and orange, the air crisp with autumn. Amelia played in the yard, 1 year old, walking steadily now, exploring everything, fearless. Margot arrived with wine. Teddy brought Rebecca, his fiancée. Eleanor came last, as always, but she came. They sat on the porch together, watching Amelia explore, watching the sun set, talking about everything and nothing. Carrie's phone buzzed. An alert from the Ashford Continental app. Flight 17 from Halifax had just landed. On time. Halifax, where it all unraveled, where the first domino fell, where Derek learned the truth about who he had really married. "You're smiling," Margot observed. "What's funny?" "Nothing's funny." Carrie tucked her phone away. "Everything is exactly as it should be." After dinner, everyone left except Eleanor. They sat on the porch in comfortable silence. Amelia asleep upstairs, the stars emerging one by one. "Do you ever think about him?" Eleanor asked. "Derek, do you wonder what he's doing?" Carrie considered the question. Her ex-husband, in a federal prison somewhere in Massachusetts, 3 years into a 12-year sentence. "No," she said, "I don't think about him at all." It was mostly true. Days would pass now without Derek crossing her mind. Weeks, sometimes. He had become irrelevant. A chapter in a book she had finished reading. That's healthy. It's survival. Carrie looked at her mother. "You taught me that. Keep moving forward. Don't let the past consume you." "Your father taught me that, actually. After we lost him, I wanted to curl up and die. But I had you and Teddy. I had this company. I had responsibilities. So you kept going. One foot in front of the other, every day. Until one day the grief wasn't the first thing I felt when I woke up." Eleanor smiled, sad and proud and loving. "It never goes away completely. The loss, the hurt, but it stops being everything." "I know what you mean." They sat in silence as the night deepened. Mother and daughter, survivors, warriors. "Your father would be so proud of you," Eleanor said finally. "The woman you've become, the mother you are, the leader you are growing into." "I hope I'm doing him justice." "You're doing more than that. You're carrying his legacy forward, making it something new, something yours." Carrie looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, she liked to think her father was watching, cheering her on, proud of everything she'd accomplished. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, sweetheart. More than you'll ever know." The next morning, Carrie took Amelia to the garden. They walked among Eleanor's roses, red and white and pink and yellow. Still blooming despite the autumn chill. Still beautiful after all these years. A plane passed overhead, blue and silver livery, the Ashford Continental logo on the tail. Carrie pointed up. "See that, sweetheart? Your grandmother built that. Your great-grandfather started it. Someday, if you want, it could be yours." Amelia reached for the plane, babbled something that might have been a word. Her eyes followed the aircraft until it disappeared into the clouds. Carrie held her daughter close, breathed in the scent of baby shampoo and autumn leaves, felt the small heart beating against her own. "I thought I lost everything. I thought I was starting over from nothing. But I was never nothing. I just forgot who I was. I won't forget again." She carried Amelia back inside, made breakfast, checked her email, started another day. And somewhere in a federal prison in Massachusetts, Derek Brennan sat in a cell and thought about everything he had lost. Not the money. He had never really had money, despite all his schemes, not the company. It had been failing for years before the arrest. Not the freedom. Prison was just another kind of cage, and he had been trapped in cages of his own, making his entire life. Her. He lost her. And more importantly, he lost the chance to know his daughter. The little girl growing up without him, learning to walk in her grandmother's garden, taking her first steps surrounded by people who loved her, people who would never let him near her. That was the price of his choices, the true cost of his manipulation. Everything else could be measured in dollars and years. But this loss was infinite, permanent, irreversible. He would spend the rest of his life knowing it. But Carrie didn't think about Derek anymore. She had moved beyond him, past him, through him. She had found something better than revenge or vindication or justice. She had found herself, the woman she always was, the woman she was always meant to become. Strong, resilient, unbreakable, free. Amelia Rose Ashford started kindergarten on a Tuesday in September. She wore a blue dress with tiny airplanes on it, her grandmother's gift. Her dark hair was pulled back in pigtails. Her backpack was almost as big as she was. Carrie walked her to the classroom door, knelt down to her level, straightened the collar of her dress. "Are you nervous, sweetheart?" "No, Mama." Amelia lifted her chin, pure Ashford stubbornness, Eleanor's stubborn chin. "I'm ready." "That's my brave girl." The teacher appeared in the doorway, young, energetic, smiling. "You must be Amelia. We're so excited to have you in our class." Amelia looked at her mother, then at the teacher, then back at her mother. "I love you, Mama." "I love you too, sweetheart. More than all the airplanes in the sky. I'll be right here when school ends." Amelia nodded, squared her small shoulders, walked into the classroom without looking back. Carrie watched her go, watched her daughter join a group of children at a table, watched her laugh at something another kid said, watched her settle into this new chapter of her life. 5 years old, starting school, growing up so impossibly fast. She walked to her car, sat in the driver's seat, didn't start the engine. Tears fell, happy ones, proud ones, overwhelmed ones. Her phone buzzed, a text from Eleanor. "First day photos, please. I'm dying over here." Carrie laughed through her tears, sent all the pictures she had taken that morning. Amelia eating breakfast. Amelia with her backpack. Amelia at the classroom door. Amelia walking away. Eleanor's response came immediately. "She looks exactly like you did. Brave and beautiful and ready to conquer the world." Carrie drove to work, the Ashford Continental headquarters. Her office on the 43rd floor, down the hall from her mother's. The foundation had grown beyond anything she had imagined. 300 scholarships awarded, 2,000 single mothers supported through job training programs, a new wing of the Children's Hospital funded, partnerships with nonprofits across the country, her father's legacy, her mother's resources, her own vision. At noon, Margot called. "Lunch?" "Can't today. Board meeting at 2, the expansion proposal." "Dinner then. At your place. I'll bring wine. Rebecca's making that pasta you love." Rebecca, Teddy's wife of 3 years now, part of the family, another piece of the life Carrie was building. "Perfect. See you at 7. The board meeting went well. The expansion proposal was approved. The foundation would open satellite offices in 3 more cities by the end of next year. More scholarships, more job training, more lives changed. At 3 o'clock, Carrie left work, drove to the school, parked in the pickup line. The bell rang, children poured out of the building like a flood, and there was Amelia, backpack bouncing, pigtails flying, smile enormous. She spotted her mother's car, ran toward it, yanked open the back door. "Mama, I made a friend. Her name is Sophie. She has a dog named Biscuit. He's a golden retriever. Can we get a dog?" "Sophie says dogs are the best. Can we?" Carrie laughed, reached back to help her daughter with the seatbelt. "Tell me everything, sweetheart. Start from the beginning." They drove home with Amelia talking nonstop. About Sophie, about the teacher, about the books and the crayons in the playground, about the boy who picked his nose, and the girl who could already read chapter books, and the guinea pig named Mr. Whiskers, who lived in a cage in the corner. Normal things, happy things, the things of childhood, the life Carrie had always wanted for her daughter. That evening, surrounded by family, Carrie looked around her dining room table. Her mother, her brother, Margot, Rebecca, Amelia in her booster seat covered in pasta sauce and giggling at something Teddy said. This was what mattered. This was what lasted. Not the money, not the status, not the man who had tried to steal it all. Family, love, home. After everyone left, Carrie tucked Amelia into bed. read her favorite story about a princess who saved herself, kissed her forehead. Mama? Amelia's voice was sleepy, heavy with exhaustion from her big day. Where's my daddy? The question she had been preparing for, the conversation she had rehearsed 100 times. Carrie sat on the edge of the bed, took her daughter's small hand. Your daddy isn't part of our family, sweetheart, she said gently. He made some choices a long time ago that hurt people, including us. Is he a bad person? Carrie thought about how to answer. The laws, the theft, the betrayal, but also the complexity of human beings, the way people could be many things at once. He made bad choices, she said finally, and he has to live with the consequences of those choices. But that's his story. It's not ours. Do you miss him? No, sweetheart, I don't. Will I ever meet him? Maybe someday, if you want to, when you're older. It will be your choice. Amelia considered this with the gravity of a 5-year-old processing big information. Then she nodded. Okay, can you sing the song now? Carrie sang the lullaby she had sung every night since Amelia was born, the same lullaby her mother had sung to her, the same lullaby her grandmother had sung before that. 4 generations of Ashford women, strong, resilient, unbreakable. When Amelia was asleep, Carrie walked to the window, looked out at the night sky. A plane crossed overhead, running lights blinking against the stars. She thought about the tarmac 6 years ago now, standing in the August heat, watching Derek wave goodbye. She thought about the woman she had been then. Lost, heartbroken, terrified. And the woman she was now, found, whole, at peace. The journey from there to here had been the hardest thing she had ever done, harder than labor, harder than grief, harder than anything she could have imagined. But she had done it, not alone, never alone. With her mother and her brother and her best friend and everyone who loved her, together they had built something beautiful from the ashes of something terrible. The prison door had been unlocked all along. She had been her own warden, trapped by her own fears and doubts and the lies she had believed. And now she was free, forever. Carrie closed the curtain, walked downstairs, poured herself a glass of wine, sat on her porch in the autumn darkness. Tomorrow there would be work, board meetings, foundation business, kindergarten pickup, homework help, dinner with family, the beautiful ordinary chaos of a well-lived life. But tonight there was this: peace, gratitude, hope. She had earned it. Every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt and fear and pain. She had survived it all, and she had emerged stronger than she ever knew she could be. The stars wheeled overhead, the night deepened, the world slept, and Caroline Ashford smiled. She was finally, completely, irrevocably home. And that's where we leave Caroline. Free, whole, surrounded by the family that truly matters. If this story moved you, if you felt her pain and celebrated her victory, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me what moment hit you the hardest. Was it the tarmac, the email about the kid, or the moment Derek realized who he had really married? If you haven't already, tap that subscribe button and hit the bell so you never miss another story like this one. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today, because sometimes the worst day of your life becomes the first day of your real life. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next story.